I'm Diane Wilson, and this is my story. Follow along until the end and let me know where you're watching from. Tuesday morning started like any other day. Coffee brewing, the morning news droning in the background, and my garden waiting for its daily dose of attention. After 35 years as a high school principal, retirement had settled into a comfortable routine. That is, until my phone rang. "Mom?" The voice on the other end belonged to my son, Joshua. I could tell from his tone, that particular cadence he'd mastered since childhood, that whatever was coming next would disappoint me. "Good morning, sweetheart. Everything okay?" I settled into my kitchen chair, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the invitation to my son's beach wedding that had been proudly displayed on my refrigerator for months. "We need to talk." He paused, and I heard muffled voices in the background. "It's about the wedding." My stomach tightened. 6 weeks of helping address those elegant invitations, tasting cakes and discussing flower arrangements flashed through my mind. "What about it, Joshua?" "Well, Brittany and I have been talking, and she's really stressed about everything being perfect." Another pause. "You know how brides get." I did know. I'd been a bride once, 40 years ago, before Joshua's father decided fatherhood wasn't his calling. "I understand wedding stress, honey. What can I do to help?" "That's just it, Mom." His voice dropped lower. "Brittany doesn't feel comfortable with you there. She thinks your presence might make things awkward." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the phone tighter, staring at the wedding invitation that announced in flowing script that Joshua Wilson and Brittany Thompson would exchange vows at Sunset Beach Resort this Saturday. "I see," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice while my hand trembled. "And you agree with this decision?" "Mom, please don't make this harder than it is." The pleading in his voice was unmistakable. "It's just one day. We'll have a nice dinner after they get back from their honeymoon." For 27 years, I'd raised this boy alone. I'd worked double shifts as a teacher before becoming a principal, just to pay for his college education. I'd sat through every baseball game, helped with every school project, and nursed him through chicken pox and broken hearts. Now I wasn't good enough to attend his wedding. "Of course," I replied, my voice calm despite the storm inside. "I understand completely." The relief in his voice was audible. "Really? Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd be reasonable about this." After hanging up, I sat motionless in my kitchen, staring at the invitation. 2 years of enduring Brittany's passive-aggressive comments about my outdated opinions and old-fashioned cooking. 2 years of biting my tongue when she'd redirect conversations away from my contributions. 2 years of watching her gradually isolate Joshua from his friends and family. I stood up, removed the invitation from the refrigerator, and tore it in half. Then, with deliberate calm, I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and began to research. Brittany Thompson had no idea who she was dealing with. I might be 62, but I'd spent 30 years managing hormonal teenagers and their helicopter parents. I'd broken up fights, mediated conflicts, and sniffed out lies from the most convincing fabricators. I hadn't survived as a single mother and school principal without developing a backbone of steel and an acute sense for deceit. It was time Brittany learned that this old dog knew a few tricks she'd never seen. The next morning, I called my sister Sophia at precisely 8 o'clock a.m. Unlike me, Sophia was never an early riser unless something was wrong. "Diane?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "It's crack of dawn. Someone better be dead or dying." "Not dead," I said. "Just disinvited. Joshua uninvited me from his wedding." "He did what?" The outrage in her voice was exactly what I needed. "That little ingrate, after everything you've done for him?" "It wasn't Joshua," I clarified, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed my own defense of my son. "It was Brittany. She doesn't feel comfortable with me there." And Joshua went along with it? The disgust in her tone was palpable. Spineless. Absolutely spineless. I told her everything while she made appropriately indignant noises. Sophia was 2 years younger than me, but acted 20 years younger. She'd never had children, opting instead for a series of adventures around the world and a successful career as a travel writer. Where I was cautious and methodical, Sophia was impulsive and bold. "So what's the plan?" she asked when I finished. "Because I know you, Diane Wilson. That calculating tone in your voice is the same one you used when the school board tried to cut the arts budget." "I don't have a plan," I said, though the seeds of one were already taking root. "But I do have questions. Joshua said Brittany feels uncomfortable around me, but she's never indicated that before. Something doesn't add up." "You think she's hiding something?" Sophia's interest was piqued. "I think," I said carefully, measuring my words, "that a woman who suddenly decides her future mother-in-law can't attend her wedding might have reasons beyond discomfort." Later that afternoon, I found myself parked across the street from Morrison Marketing, where Brittany worked as a senior account manager. I sat in my car, wrestling with my conscience. Was I really going to spy on my future daughter-in-law? What kind of person does that make me? I wondered. But then I remembered the dismissive way Brittany had treated me at Easter dinner, correcting my stories and exchanging knowing glances with Joshua. I remembered how she'd accidentally excluded me from the engagement party photos. Most of all, I remembered the look on Joshua's face when he called to uninvite me from his wedding. Not apologetic, but relieved. As I debated with myself, the decision was made for me. Brittany emerged from the building, checking her watch. Instead of heading to the parking garage where she normally kept her car, she walked briskly down the street. Curious, I left my car and followed at a safe distance. 3 blocks later, she entered Brewster's Cafe, a trendy spot downtown. Through the large windows, I watched as she scanned the room, her face lighting up when she spotted someone. A tall man with dark hair stood to greet her. Not Joshua. My heart pounded as I watched Brittany embrace this stranger with far more enthusiasm than seemed appropriate for a woman getting married in 4 days. They sat close, heads bent together in intimate conversation. When he placed his hand over hers, she didn't pull away. I quickly ducked into a nearby shop when I saw them preparing to leave. Through the window, I watched them walk to a parked car. Before getting in, the man pulled Brittany close for a kiss that was definitely not between casual acquaintances. I felt sick to my stomach. My son was about to marry a woman who was clearly involved with someone else. Back at home, I called Sophia again. "I need your help," I said without preamble. "I was waiting for this call," she replied. "What did you find?" I told her about Brittany and the mystery man at the cafe. "Could it be a colleague? A cousin? Old friend?" Sophia asked, playing devil's advocate. "Do you normally French kiss your colleagues in broad daylight?" I countered. "Fair point. So what's the plan, Nancy Drew?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to call Joshua immediately and tell him what I'd seen, but would he believe me? Or would he see it as a desperate attempt by his excluded mother to sabotage his wedding? I need more information, I decided. I need to know who this man is, how long this has been going on, and if it's what I think it is. "You need evidence," Sophia stated plainly. "Yes," I admitted, the word heavy with implications. "I need evidence." "Well then," Sophia said, her voice lighter than the situation warranted, "I think it's time for the Carter sisters to do some reconnaissance, don't you? I'll be at your place in an hour." After hanging up, I sat in my living room, staring at the photographs on my mantel. Joshua as a toddler, grinning with 2 front teeth missing. Joshua at his high school graduation, arm around my shoulders. Joshua and Brittany at their engagement party, her diamond ring prominently displayed. Was I really going to spy on my son's fiancée? Was this crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed? Then I remembered the cold dismissal in his voice. We'll have a nice dinner after they get back from their honeymoon. As if 30 years of motherhood could be compensated with a consolation dinner. I picked up my phone and texted Sophia. Bring your good camera. Sophia arrived with equipment that would make a private investigator jealous. A high-end camera with telephoto lens, a pair of compact binoculars, and a notebook. Where did you get all this? I asked, bewildered. Remember that travel piece I did on wildlife photography in Tanzania? She grinned. Kept the gear. Never know when you'll need to document a cheating bride-to-be in her natural habitat. I shook my head at my sister's enthusiasm, but couldn't help feeling grateful for her support. This feels wrong, Sophia. You know what's wrong? She unpacked her equipment on my kitchen table. Uninviting your fiancé's mother from your wedding while you're sneaking around with another man. That's what's wrong. She had a point. We spent the evening planning our strategy. According to what I'd learned from helping Joshua with wedding arrangements, Brittany took an extended lunch break every day from 12:15 to 1:30 p.m. She also regularly attended an evening spin class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Let's start with the lunch break tomorrow, Sophia suggested. I'll come with you. 2 old ladies having coffee is less suspicious than one lurking solo. The next day, we positioned ourselves at a corner table in Brewster's Cafe with a clear view of the entrance. At exactly 12:20 p.m., Brittany walked in, looking polished in a fitted blazer and skirt. This time, she didn't sit inside but ordered something to go and left quickly. She's on the move, Sophia whispered dramatically. We followed at a discreet distance as Brittany walked 3 blocks to Elevate Fitness, a boutique gym with large windows facing the street. Through the glass, we could see her greet the same dark-haired man from yesterday. He was wearing a fitted athletic shirt with Elevate Fitness emblazoned across it. He works there, I murmured. He's a trainer. We watched as they spoke briefly at the reception desk before Brittany disappeared into the locker room. When she emerged in workout clothes, the man led her to a private training room away from the main gym floor. How convenient, Sophia remarked. Private sessions. We settled at a small cafe across the street to wait. 50 minutes later, Brittany emerged from the gym. Her hair was perfectly styled, with not a drop of sweat in sight for someone who had supposedly just worked out. Either she's the least active exerciser I've ever seen, or that wasn't a real workout, Sophia observed. As if to confirm our suspicions, the trainer appeared 5 minutes later. He checked his surroundings before walking toward a black SUV parked in the alley beside the gym. Brittany was behind the wheel. Get the camera, I whispered urgently. Sophia snapped several photos as the trainer got into the passenger seat. The SUV pulled away, heading toward the residential district. Should we follow them? Sophia asked. I hesitated. This was already farther than I'd planned to go. But if Brittany was indeed cheating on my son, I needed to be absolutely certain. Yes, I decided. But we're just going to see where they go. Nothing more. We followed at a safe distance as the SUV drove to a small apartment complex on Maple Street. Both Brittany and the trainer entered the building together, disappearing behind the door of Unit 214. I need to know who he is, I said, jotting down the apartment number. Leave that to me, Sophia replied. When we returned to the gym, she went inside while I waited in the car. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a triumphant smile. Ryan Moore, she announced. Personal trainer, specializes in private sessions. I scheduled a consultation for tomorrow. How did you manage that? Flirted with the receptionist. Said I wanted to get in shape for my nephew's wedding. He's married, by the way. Who? The receptionist? No, Ryan Moore, husband, father of 2. I saw the family photo on his desk. Wife's name is Jessica. Pretty woman, Looks like a kindergarten teacher or something wholesome like that. My stomach sank. This was worse than I'd imagined. Not only was Brittany cheating on Joshua, but she was involved with a married man who was cheating on his family. We returned to my house to process what we'd learned. I paced my living room, torn between calling Joshua immediately and gathering more evidence. "If you tell him now, he might not believe you," Sophia cautioned. Men in love can be remarkably blind, especially when the messenger is someone his fiancé has already undermined. "But his wedding is in 3 days," I protested. "If I wait too long, it will be too late." "Then we need to work fast," Sophia said. "We need irrefutable evidence he can't ignore." That evening, my doorbell rang. Joshua stood on my porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing a contrite expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mom, can we talk?" He didn't wait for an answer before heading straight to the kitchen, the place where we'd had every serious conversation of his life. "I brought your favorite," he said, setting the bottle on the counter. Pinot Noir, the wine we'd shared when he graduated college. "Bribery wine," I observed. "This must be serious." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I know yesterday was difficult." "Do you?" I leaned against the counter, studying my son's face. The boy I'd raised had grown into a handsome man, but right now he looked uncertain, conflicted. "Brittany feels terrible about how everything came out," he continued. "It's just that her family is very formal. They have these traditions about wedding parties and guest lists. Her grandmother's really old-fashioned about these things." Each lie flowed more easily than the last. I'd met Brittany's grandmother exactly once, a delightful 85-year-old woman who had hugged me warmly and told me she was thrilled her granddaughter had found someone with such a wonderful mother. That conversation had apparently never made it back to Joshua. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the bar stool. He perched on it like a guilty teenager awaiting punishment. "Mom, please don't make this about you. It's our day." The hour stung worse than if he'd said her. He was complicit, a willing participant in my exclusion. "You're right," I said, reaching across the counter to squeeze his hand. The same hand I'd held through vaccinations, school events, and heartbreaks. "It is your day, and I want it to be perfect for you." Relief flooded his face. "Really? You're not mad?" "Sweetheart, I just want you to be happy." The truth, though not the whole truth. That's all I've ever wanted. "I love you, Mom. You know that, right?" "I know." After he left, I returned to my computer. An idea was forming. Risky, perhaps even unethical, but potentially necessary. I began creating a social media profile. Not for me, of course. I was just a heartbroken mother who'd been excluded from her son's wedding. But my friend Rachel Mitchell, whose profile I carefully crafted with stock photos and a believable backstory, was a wedding photographer who believed in truth and transparency. She posted inspiring quotes about love and honesty. She had strong opinions about fidelity and respect in marriage. People were already following her content. By Thursday morning, I had a plan. I would attend the wedding after all. Not as the mother of the groom, but as someone else entirely. Someone with a camera and a mission to document the truth. "This is either brilliant or completely insane," Sophia said when I explained my idea over coffee. "Probably both," I admitted. "But what choice do I have? If I show Joshua the photos we've taken so far, he'll think I'm making it up or stalking Brittany out of spite. If I wait until after they're married, it might be too late to spare him the pain of a divorce. And if you're caught?" I considered this. "Then I lose my son anyway. At least this way there's a chance he'll know the truth before making a terrible mistake." Sophia studied me over her coffee cup. "You know, when we were kids, you were always the sensible one. The rule follower. I was the troublemaker." People change. No, she smiled slightly. They reveal themselves when pushed far enough. The Diane who raised a son alone while building a career never backed down from a fight. She just picked her battles carefully. That afternoon, we followed Brittany again during her lunch break. This time, she and Ryan went straight to the apartment on Maple Street. I documented their arrival time, 12:22 p.m. When they hadn't emerged by 1:15 p.m., we had our answer about how those private training sessions were being conducted. We need to find out more about Ryan Moore, I decided. If he's having an affair with Brittany, there might be others. There might be a pattern. Sophia took on the investigation while I focused on perfecting my Rachel Mitchell persona. By evening, she had returned with disturbing information. I had my consultation with Ryan, she reported. Charming man, very attentive, too attentive. He suggested we could do special sessions outside regular gym hours. She made air quotes around special sessions. So this is his pattern. Appears so. I also chatted up the receptionist again. Ryan's been working there for 3 years. Before that, he was fired from another gym across town. She didn't know why, but hinted there was drama with a client. How did Brittany meet him? Started training with him about 6 months ago, according to the membership records the receptionist helpfully pulled up for me. Sophia smiled innocently when I raised an eyebrow. What? I told her I was considering a family membership plan. 6 months. 6 months of deception while planning a wedding. 6 months of lying to my son while I helped address invitations and select flower arrangements. As we were processing this information, my phone buzzed with a text from Joshua. Thanks for understanding, Mom. You're the best. See you when we get back. I typed back. Have a wonderful wedding, sweetheart. You deserve everything that's coming to you. Every word was true. Friday morning, I woke with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Today was my last chance to gather conclusive evidence before Joshua made what could be the biggest mistake of his life. Are you sure about this? Sophia asked over breakfast. Once you go down this road, there's no turning back. I'm already halfway down it, I replied. But you don't have to come with me. This is my mess. Don't be ridiculous, she scoffed. When have the Carter sisters ever backed down from a challenge? Besides, my life's been getting a little too predictable lately. Our first stop was the Sunset Beach Resort, where I needed to scout the location for tomorrow. The wedding would take place on the beach at 4:00 p.m., with the reception in the resort's ballroom afterward. I'd helped plan enough of this wedding to know every detail by heart, back when I was still invited. The bridal party would be getting ready in the Sunset Suite on the 3rd floor. The groomsmen, including Joshua, would be in the Sunrise Suite across the hall. The ceremony would be followed by cocktails on the terrace, then dinner and dancing in the Ocean View Ballroom. Now I was on the outside, planning not how to celebrate my son's wedding, but how to expose a painful truth. The ethical thing would be to tell Joshua directly, I murmured, more to myself than to Sophia as we sat in the resort cafe, observing the wedding setup on the beach. And would he believe you? Sophia asked. Or would he think his excluded mother is trying to ruin his wedding? She was right. Joshua was already deeply under Brittany's influence. If I approached him with accusations, he'd likely dismiss them as jealousy or bitterness. What we need, Sophia continued, is for Joshua to see the truth with his own eyes, something undeniable. After leaving the resort, we drove to Morrison Marketing. It was time to observe Brittany's full routine one more time before the wedding. As expected, she left for lunch at exactly 12:15 p.m. Today, however, she didn't go to the gym or the apartment. Instead, she met Ryan at a small jewelry store 3 blocks from her office. Through the window, we watched as he showed her something small that glinted in the light. She smiled, kissed him quickly, then left with a small package. A wedding gift for her lover, I said bitterly. How romantic. We followed Brittany back to her office, then decided to see what Ryan would do next. He returned to Elevate Fitness, where he worked until 5 p.m. Then, instead of going home to his family, he drove to the apartment on Maple Street. "Should we wait to see if Brittany joins him?" Sophia asked. "No need," I replied. "We know enough. Let's go back to my place and finalize our plan for tomorrow." At home, I sat at my computer, organizing the evidence we'd gathered. Photos of Brittany and Ryan entering the apartment together. Timestamps showing extended workout sessions that couldn't possibly be legitimate. The visit to the jewelry store. Was it enough? Would Joshua believe photos and timestamps? Or would he dismiss them as fabricated or misinterpreted? I needed something more concrete. Something undeniable. "What we need is video," I said suddenly. "Photos can be explained away, but video with audio would be irrefutable." Sophia nodded slowly. "And you think you can get that at the wedding?" "I have to try. If I can capture Brittany and Ryan together at the actual wedding, Joshua would have to believe it." "Wait," Sophia looked concerned. "You think Ryan will be at the wedding?" "I helped with the guest list, remember? Ryan Moore is invited as Brittany's colleague from work. Joshua's never met him." Sophia's eyes widened. "The audacity is almost impressive." "It gets worse," I added. "I overheard Brittany telling her mother they're planning to move to California after the honeymoon. Apparently she's been offered a job there. I doubt Joshua knows about this yet." "So she's planning to marry your son, cheat on him with a married man, and uproot his life without consulting him?" Sophia shook her head in disbelief. "This woman is a piece of work." As we finalized our plan for the wedding day, my phone rang. It was Joshua again. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. How are you doing?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just enjoying a quiet evening with Aunt Sophia." "Oh, Sophia's in town? That's great. Listen, I've been thinking. Maybe you could come to the dinner we're planning after we get back from the honeymoon. Brittany suggested we could do it at that Italian place you like." The olive branch was so small it was practically a twig, but the fact that he was offering it told me he felt guilty. "That sounds lovely," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We'll talk about it when you get back." "Great. Thanks for being so understanding, Mom. Most mothers would be raising hell about being excluded from their son's wedding." "I'm not most mothers," I replied truthfully. After hanging up, I turned to Sophia, who had heard the entire conversation. "He has no idea what's coming, does he?" she asked softly. "No," I said, a heaviness settling in my chest. And part of me wishes I didn't have to be the one to show him. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying scenarios in my mind, imagining Joshua's reaction when he discovered the truth. Would he be grateful? Or would he resent me for destroying his happiness, however illusory it might be? Was I doing this for him or for myself? Was it truly about protecting him, or was it about my wounded pride at being excluded? Around 3 a.m., I got up and went to the living room, where I kept photo albums from Joshua's childhood. I paged through images of a gap-toothed boy building sandcastles, a teenager in a baseball uniform, a college graduate with his whole life ahead of him. In every photo, the love between us was evident. The trust, the bond that I thought couldn't be broken. Now I was about to put that bond to the ultimate test. As dawn broke, I made my decision. I would proceed with the plan, not out of revenge or wounded pride, but because my son deserved to know the truth before committing his life to someone who was already betraying him. If that cost me my relationship with him, it was a price I was willing to pay. Saturday morning dawned perfect for a beach wedding. Sunny, 78 degrees with a gentle breeze off the ocean. I dressed carefully in a navy blue sundress with a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, partially as a disguise, but mostly appropriate for an outdoor wedding. I packed Sophia's professional camera, making sure the battery was fully charged and the memory card empty. "Ready?" Sophia asked as I prepared to leave. "As I'll ever be." I hesitated at the door. "If this goes wrong—" "It won't," she interrupted. "But if it does, we'll face it together. That's what sisters do." I drove to Sunset Beach Resort with a strange calm. The parking lot was filling with wedding guests. I recognized several of Joshua's college friends and some of Brittany's work colleagues. They all looked excited, checking their phones and fixing their appearance before heading to the ceremony. I parked 3 rows back and watched the setup. Everything was exactly as planned. White chairs on the beach, an arch decorated with coral and white flowers, musicians setting up near the shoreline. In a different world, I would have been helping Joshua straighten his tie right now, telling him how proud I was. Instead, I was preparing to upend his world. At 2 p.m., I entered the resort lobby like I belonged there. Nobody questioned a well-dressed older woman with a camera. Wedding photographers were everywhere at beach resorts on Saturdays. "Excuse me," I approached the concierge with a confident smile. "Could you direct me to the Thompson Miller Wedding Preparation Suite?" "Of course," he replied. "The bridal party is in the Sunset Suite on the 3rd floor. Just follow the signs." I took the elevator up and found the hallway bustling with activity. Bridesmaids in coral dresses hurried between rooms, carrying flowers and makeup bags. The groomsmen were in the sunrise suite across the hall, and I could hear Joshua's voice through the door. For a moment, I almost wavered. He sounded so happy, so excited. This was my son's wedding day, regardless of everything else. Then I heard Brittany's voice through the partially open door of the bridal suite, clear and cold. "God, I'm so glad we didn't invite his mother. Can you imagine? She would have found some way to make this about her." Her bridesmaids laughed, and I heard one say, "At least you won't have to deal with her very often after this." "Living in different states will help," Brittany continued. "Ryan doesn't know yet, but I'm going to tell him after the honeymoon." I moved closer to the door, pretending to adjust my camera settings. I got offered that position in California, and honestly, it's the perfect excuse to get away from all his baggage. His friends are so immature, and his mother is just clingy and pathetic. Another voice asked, "What if he doesn't want to move?" Brittany's laugh was dismissive. "He'll do whatever I tell him to do. He always has. The man is completely whipped." I'd heard enough, more than enough. I walked back to the elevator, rode down to the lobby, and went outside to wait. The wedding would start in less than 2 hours. Ryan Moore would be attending as Brittany's friend from work, according to the guest list I'd helped compile months ago. I positioned myself on the public beach access, close enough to film everything but far enough away to avoid recognition. As guests began to arrive and take their seats, I scanned the crowd for Ryan. I spotted him near the back, looking handsome in a light gray suit. He was chatting casually with another guest, as if he weren't attending the wedding of a woman he was intimately involved with. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. At 3:55, the groomsmen took their positions at the altar. Joshua looked handsome in his white linen suit, nervous but happy. If only he knew what I knew. At precisely 4 p.m., the music started. The bridesmaids processed down the aisle, followed by Brittany on her father's arm. She was beautiful in her designer gown, a vision of bridal perfection. No one looking at her would suspect she'd been in another man's arms just days before. I started recording as the officiant began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join Joshua and Brittany in the bonds of holy matrimony." The irony of those words, holy matrimony, when there was nothing holy about what Brittany was doing, struck me like a physical blow. As the ceremony continued, I zoomed in on Brittany's face as she spoke her vows. "I promise to be faithful and true." The words were ash in my mouth. I panned to Ryan in the audience, his expression unreadable as he watched the woman he was sleeping with pledge herself to another man. Then I zoomed in on my son, my beautiful, trusting son, as he promised to love and cherish a woman who was already betraying him. The ceremony concluded with "You may kiss the bride," and the guests erupted in applause. As everyone moved toward the reception, I maintained my position, continuing to film. The cocktail hour, the dinner, the speeches that praised Brittany's sweetness and Joshua's luck in finding such a wonderful partner. Then came the dancing. Joshua and Brittany had their first dance to "At Last" by Etta James. The cruel irony of the song choice wasn't lost on me. As the evening progressed, I noticed Ryan approaching Brittany during a slow song. They spoke briefly, and I caught her glancing around nervously before following him toward the beach exit. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. I slipped out a side door and positioned myself behind a sand dune with my camera ready. Ryan and Brittany walked to a secluded spot about 50 yards from the reception. Even with the distance, the body language was unmistakable. This wasn't a casual conversation between colleagues. He kissed her. She kissed him back, passionately and without hesitation, while her new husband danced with his best man's wife inside, completely oblivious. I filmed every second of it, making sure the timestamp was visible. When they separated, I could hear Brittany say, "2 more hours and we can leave. I told Joshua I have a headache coming on." "My room's ready," Ryan replied. "Jessica thinks I'm in Miami on business until Sunday." Perfect. One last celebration before the honeymoon. They walked back separately. Brittany first, then Ryan 5 minutes later. I waited until they were inside before moving to the parking lot to upload everything to my laptop. 3 hours later, I was home with a USB drive containing 2 hours of Brittany's wedding day footage, plus the earlier videos from the cafe, gym, and apartment. I'd also captured several audio clips that would provide perfect context. I made myself a cup of tea and opened my laptop. Rachel Mitchell had been busy all week, building anticipation for her special wedding project that would expose the truth about modern marriage. Her follower count had grown exponentially, with thousands of people eagerly waiting for her next post. I looked at the clock, 2:17 a.m. In 5 hours, Joshua and Brittany would be flying to Cancun for their honeymoon. By the time they landed, Wedding Day Truth, When Love Isn't Enough, would be trending on every social media platform. I scheduled the post for 7:00 a.m. and went to bed. In less than 3 days after being told I wasn't welcome at my son's wedding, I was about to give him the most memorable wedding gift of his life. The truth. By 9:00 a.m. Sunday morning, Wedding Day Truth, When Love Isn't Enough, had 2.3 million views and climbing. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since 7:30, but I ignored it while I made pancakes and watched the comment count explode on my laptop screen. The video was masterfully edited, if I do say so myself. It started with beautiful wedding footage. Joshua and Brittany looking radiant, exchanging vows, sharing their first dance. Then the screen split. On one side, Brittany slow dancing with her new husband. On the other side, security camera footage from the cafe showing her with Ryan 3 days earlier. The audio was devastating. Brittany's voice from the bridal suite. "God, I'm so glad we didn't invite his mother. The woman is just clingy and pathetic." Then cut to her wedding vows. "I promise to honor you above all others." The finale was pure cinematic gold. Brittany and Ryan kissing on the beach while At Last played softly in the background, then cut to Joshua inside, completely oblivious, laughing with his groomsmen. Rachel Mitchell had captioned it perfectly. "This groom deserves so much better. When you exclude family from your wedding, sometimes the truth finds another way to be heard." #wedding, truth #justice, #modern marriage. My phone rang for the 15th time. Joshua's number. I let it go to voicemail again, Not yet ready for that conversation. At 9:47 a.m., someone knocked on my door. Through the window, I saw Sophia holding a bag from my favorite bakery and grinning like the Cheshire Cat. "You magnificent, vindictive genius," she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. "Have you seen the news?" "What news?" She turned on my TV and flipped to the local morning show. There was Britney's wedding photo on screen with the headline, "Viral Wedding Video Exposes Cheating Bride." The anchor was saying, "The identity of the videographer remains unknown, but the footage has sparked a national conversation about honesty in marriage and the treatment of extended family in modern weddings." "They're calling you a mystery wedding photographer," Sophia laughed. "Channel 7 wants to interview Rachel Mitchell, but can't find her. Imagine that." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We know it was you. Delete the video or there will be consequences." B. I showed Sophia the text. "Looks like Brittany's not enjoying her honeymoon." "What are you going to do?" Sophia asked, suddenly serious. "Nothing. I'm a grieving mother who was excluded from her son's wedding. What would I know about viral videos?" The doorbell rang again. This time it was a woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, pretty, red-eyed, with shaking hands. "Mrs. Miller?" she asked. "I'm Jessica Moore, Ryan's wife. I think we need to talk." I invited her in, offered coffee, and waited for her to speak. "My husband's in that video," she said quietly, clutching the mug like a lifeline. "I've suspected something for months, but seeing it like that, with the timestamps," she broke down completely. "I'm so sorry," I said, and meant it. I never intended for innocent people to get hurt. "You did the right thing," she said through her tears. "My children deserve better than a father who lies. Your son deserves better than a wife who cheats." "How long has this been going on?" I asked gently. "Ryan and Brittany? At least 3 months that I know of." "The apartment on Maple Street." Jessica nodded, wiping her eyes. "I found the lease agreement in his desk. It's been 6 months. 6 months. While Joshua saved for their honeymoon, while he asked for my help with wedding plans, Brittany had been leading a double life." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I already filed for divorce this morning. My lawyer says the video is admissible evidence. Ryan's going to lose everything." She looked at me directly, her eyes still wet but determined. "Thank you for giving me the truth. It couldn't have been easy knowing it would hurt your son, too." After she left, I sat in my living room staring at my phone. 17 missed calls from Joshua, 12 from Brittany, 6 from numbers I didn't recognize. The video had 4.1 million views now. My phone rang again. This time I answered. "Mom," Joshua's voice was broken, barely recognizable. "Joshua, we need to talk." Joshua arrived at my house Monday evening, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. His honeymoon tan couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes or the defeat in his shoulders. "The whole resort knew," he said, slumping into my kitchen chair. People were staring, whispering. Someone recognized Brittany from the video and asked for her autograph. Can you believe that? They wanted her autograph. I poured him coffee and waited. Sometimes the best thing a mother can do is just listen. "Brittany's convinced you hired a private investigator," he continued, staring into his mug. "She thinks this was all planned, that you've been stalking her for months." I kept my expression neutral. "And what do you think?" He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I think my mother wouldn't do something this cruel, just because her feelings were hurt." The accusation stung, but I deserved it. I had been cruel, though not without reason. "Joshua," I said carefully, "do you think the video is fake?" "No." He ran his hands through his hair. "God, no. That's the worst part. It's all real, isn't it? Every single second." I reached across the table and took his hand. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Are you? His voice hardened. Are you really sorry, Mom? Because part of me thinks you're enjoying this. His words hit harder than I expected. Was I enjoying it? Watching Brittany's perfect image crumble? Seeing her lose control of the narrative she'd so carefully constructed? Maybe I was enjoying it a little. The vindication. The justice. I'm sorry you're hurt, I said carefully. I'm sorry you married someone who doesn't respect you. I'm not sorry the truth came out. Joshua stood up suddenly, pacing the kitchen. She says it didn't mean anything. Ryan was just helping her work through cold feet. The physical stuff was just stress relief. He paused. I know how it sounds, but people make mistakes. Marriage is about forgiveness, right? I stared at my son, this grown man who still wanted to believe in fairy tales. Sweetheart, she's been having an affair for 6 months. She kept a secret apartment. She planned to tell you about moving to California after the honeymoon without discussing it with you first. This wasn't cold feet or stress relief. How do you know about California? His voice was quiet but intense. I told him about overhearing the conversation in the bridal suite. His face crumpled as each detail sank in. She had it all planned out, he whispered. Yes. The move, cutting ties with everyone here, with you? Yes. The job offer in California is real. She accepted it 2 weeks ago. She was going to present it as a surprise opportunity you couldn't pass up. We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, the streetlights were coming on, and I could hear the neighbor's dog barking at something in their yard. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Joshua looked me directly in the eyes. Did you make that video? I looked at my son, really looked at him. The little boy who used to come running to me with scraped knees and hurt feelings. The teenager who trusted me to help him navigate his first heartbreak. The young man who'd called me every Sunday until Brittany decided those calls were too much. No, I said. I didn't make that video. It was technically true. Rachel Mitchell made the video. Relief flooded his face. I knew it. I told Brittany you weren't capable of something like that. My stomach twisted with guilt, but I pushed it aside. Joshua, what are you going to do? I don't know. He sighed heavily. She wants to work on things. She says if we move to California, we can start fresh away from all this drama. And what do you want? He was quiet for a long time, staring at the kitchen table where he'd done homework as a child. I want to trust my wife, but every time I look at her, I see that video. Her laughing about you, kissing him, planning to control my life without even asking what I wanted. Then you have your answer. Do I? Because I feel like I'm losing everything at once. My marriage, my trust, maybe my relationship with you too. You're not losing me, sweetheart, I said, reaching for his hand again. You never could. He hugged me before he left, holding on longer than he had in years. I love you, Mom. Whatever happens next, I need you to know that. After he drove away, I opened my laptop. The video had 8.2 million views. Rachel Mitchell had gained 200,000 followers, and Brittany had been tagged in approximately 50,000 comments. None of them supportive. Sometimes the truth is cruel, but it's still the truth. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Brittany stood on my doorstep wearing oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd excluded me from her wedding 4 days ago. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into my house without invitation. Come in, I said dryly to her retreating figure. She paced my living room like a caged animal, radiating tension and fury. You've destroyed my life. My job wants me to take a leave of absence. My family won't speak to me. Ryan's wife is taking everything in their divorce and naming me as correspondent. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said. taking a seat on my couch. She whirled around. Are you? Because I think you planned every second of this. I think you hired someone to follow me and Ryan. I think you orchestrated this whole thing because your feelings got hurt. I gestured for her to sit. She remained standing, vibrating with anger and desperation. Brittany, let me ask you something, I said calmly. If roles were reversed, if Joshua had been having an affair and I had proof, would you want me to tell you? That's not the same thing, she snapped. Isn't it? You made choices. Those choices had consequences. The video didn't create your affair or your lies. It just revealed them. You don't understand. Ryan and I, it's complicated. Joshua is sweet, but he's not challenging. He doesn't push me to be better. Ryan does. So you married the wrong man. I married a good man, she said defensively. That should be enough. I studied Brittany's face, seeing something I hadn't noticed before. Under the anger and desperation was genuine confusion. She really believed she could have both lives, the security of marriage to Joshua and the excitement of an affair with Ryan. Brittany, did you love Joshua when you married him? Of course I did, I do. Then why exclude his mother from your wedding? She sat down finally, her composure cracking. Because you see too much. You ask questions. You make me feel like I'm not good enough for him. Are you? The question hung in the air between us. Brittany's carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. I don't know, she whispered. I thought I was. But being with Ryan made me feel alive in a way Joshua never did. And I thought I could have both. That nobody would get hurt if I was careful. Somebody always gets hurt, Brittany. The only question is who and when. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, her voice small. The affair was supposed to end after the wedding. Ryan was supposed to be my last bit of freedom before settling into married life. But it didn't end. It got stronger. And then there was the job offer in California, and it seemed like a sign, a way to start over, maybe even find a way to be with Ryan eventually. I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for this young woman who'd made such destructive choices. Brittany, you need to be honest with Joshua about all of it. He'll leave me, her voice cracked. He might, but if you keep lying, you'll definitely lose him. And you'll lose yourself, too. She stared out my window for several minutes. The video, can you get it taken down? I can't, I said truthfully. And even if I could, screenshots exist. It's out there now. So I'm ruined, she said bitterly. My career, my marriage, my reputation, all because I made some bad choices. You're 28 years old, I pointed out. You're not ruined unless you choose to be. But you need to stop blaming everyone else and start taking responsibility. Brittany left without another word. Through my window, I watched her sit in her car for 10 minutes before driving away. That evening, Joshua called. Brittany told me about her conversation with you, about California, about Ryan, about everything. How are you doing? I asked, concerned by the flatness in his voice. I'm filing for annulment. Turns out when your wife has been planning to relocate your entire life without telling you, it counts as fraud. Relief flooded through me. I'm proud of you, honey. I need to apologize, Mom, for everything. For letting Brittany treat you badly, for excluding you from the wedding, for doubting you when the video came out. You don't need to apologize for loving someone, Joshua, but I do need to apologize for choosing her over you. You've never been anything but supportive, and I let her convince me you were the problem. What matters is that you see clearly now. I do, he said with renewed strength in his voice. And I see that I have the strongest, smartest mother in the world. Someone who taught me that actions have consequences, even when I forgot that lesson. "What will you do now?" I asked. "I'm moving back home for a while if that's okay. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be who someone else wants me to be." "Your room is exactly as you left it," I said, smiling through sudden tears. 3 weeks after the wedding that broke the internet, I was grocery shopping when a young woman approached me in the produce section. "Excuse me, are you Diane Wilson?" My heart stopped. Had someone figured out the connection between me and the viral video? "Yes, I am. I'm Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News. I've been investigating the wedding day truth story, and I'd like to ask you a few questions." This was it, the moment I'd been dreading. "I'm not sure how I can help you," I said carefully. "Well, you're Joshua Wilson's mother, correct? The groom in the video." "Yes." "And you weren't invited to your son's wedding?" "That's correct." Sarah pulled out her phone and started recording. "How did that make you feel?" I looked at this young reporter, probably Brittany's age, eager for her big break. "It made me feel sad. Every mother wants to be part of her son's wedding day. Did you know about your daughter-in-law's affair?" I had no knowledge of Brittany's personal relationships beyond what I observed as Joshua's mother. "Some people online are speculating that you might have been involved in creating or distributing the wedding video. Any comment on that?" This was the moment of truth. I could lie, deny everything, and probably get away with it. Or I could own what I'd done and face the consequences. "Sarah, let me tell you something about being a mother," I said carefully. "When your child is being hurt, your first instinct is to protect them. Sometimes that means stepping back and letting them learn from their mistakes. Sometimes it means intervening." "So you're saying you did create the video?" Her eyes widened. "I'm saying that sometimes the truth needs help finding its way to the surface." Sarah's excitement was palpable. She'd gotten more than she bargained for. "Mrs. Miller, are you admitting on camera that you created the viral wedding video?" I thought about Joshua, home in his childhood bedroom, slowly rebuilding his confidence and sense of self. I thought about Jessica Patterson, finally free from a lying husband. I thought about all the comments on the video from people thanking Rachel Mitchell for exposing the truth. I'm admitting that I love my son enough to make sure he knows the truth about the person he married, even if it meant risking my relationship with him. Even though it humiliated your daughter-in-law publicly? Brittany humiliated herself, I replied firmly. I just documented it. The interview aired that evening. By the next morning, I was getting calls from talk shows, podcasts, and documentary filmmakers. Justice Grandma was trending on Twitter. Opinion pieces were being written about maternal intuition, wedding ethics, and the price of truth. Some people called me a hero. Others called me vindictive and cruel. I was simultaneously celebrated and condemned, sometimes by the same people. But Joshua supported me completely. "You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life," he told reporters who showed up at our house. "My mother saw what I was too blinded by love to see." Brittany, meanwhile, had moved to California to take the job she'd planned all along. Ryan was living in a studio apartment and working at a different gym after his wife took everything in the divorce. The video had over 50 million views now. Rachel Mitchell had become an internet legend, even though everyone knew she was really me. And I felt something I hadn't expected: peace. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't walking on eggshells around my son's partner. I wasn't pretending to like someone who treated me with contempt. I wasn't enabling a relationship built on lies and manipulation. The truth had set us all free, even if freedom came at a cost. Yet with the public exposure came consequences I hadn't anticipated. My former colleagues from the school district called, some supportive, others disapproving. Strangers stopped me in the grocery store to share their opinions on my actions. The ethics of what I'd done became a topic of debate on morning talk shows. Had I gone too far? Had I crossed a line between protecting my son and invading another person's privacy? These questions haunted me, especially at night when I couldn't sleep. One evening, as Joshua and I were having dinner, he asked the question I'd been dreading. Why didn't you just come to me with what you knew? Why the video, the public exposure, all of it? I set down my fork, considering my answer carefully. Would you have believed me? I don't know, he admitted. Probably not at first. That's why. You were so in love with her, so convinced she was perfect. And she had already created this narrative where I was the problem. The clingy, interfering mother. If I'd come to you with accusations, it would have pushed you further away from me and closer to her. Joshua nodded slowly. You're probably right. I was completely under her spell. I didn't want to hurt you, Joshua. I just couldn't let you bind your life to someone who was already betraying you. Even if it meant risking our relationship? Even then, I said softly. That's what real love is sometimes. Being willing to let someone go if that's what's best for them. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you for loving me that much. That night, I received an unexpected email from Jessica Moore. Dear Diane, I wanted to update you on my situation. The divorce is proceeding, and thanks to the evidence in the video, I've been granted full custody of our children. Ryan is trying to make amends, taking parenting classes and attending therapy. I don't know if we'll ever reconcile, but he's finally taking responsibility for his actions. I've started a support group for people affected by infidelity. It's been healing to connect with others who understand this particular pain. Would you believe your story has inspired many of our members to seek the truth in their own relationships rather than living in denial? You made a difficult choice, one that many people have criticized. But those of us who have lived with deception know that sometimes the truth, however painful, is the greatest gift. With gratitude, Jessica, I read the email twice, tears blurring my vision. In the midst of all the chaos and judgment, here was evidence that some good had come from my actions. The next day, I received a certified letter from a law firm representing Brittany Thompson. She was threatening to sue me for invasion of privacy, defamation of character, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter demanded I issue a public apology and pay $500,000 in damages. When I showed it to Joshua, he laughed without humor. She really doesn't get it, does she? She's the one who cheated, lied and tried to manipulate my life, but somehow she's the victim. She's hurt and humiliated, I said, surprising myself by defending her. People lash out when they're cornered. Are you worried about the lawsuit? I considered this. No, truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Everything in that video was factual. As for invasion of privacy, I filmed in public places where there's no expectation of privacy. What about emotional distress? She caused plenty of that herself, I pointed out. Besides, I have dozens of witnesses who can testify that I wasn't even invited to the wedding. How could I have filmed it if I wasn't there? Rachel Mitchell filmed it, Joshua said with a small smile. The mysterious wedding photographer no one can find. Exactly. I consulted with a lawyer nonetheless, who confirmed my assessment. The lawsuit was more intimidation than substance. Still, the threat hung over me, another consequence of my decision to expose the truth. As April turned to May, the media frenzy began to die down. Joshua started therapy to work through his feelings about the failed marriage and the public spectacle it had become. He reconnected with friends Brittany had alienated and began considering what he wanted to do next with his life. I tried to give him space, conscious that at 32 he needed independence even while living in his childhood home. We established new routines and boundaries, learning how to live together as two adults rather than parent and child. One evening, as we were walking the dog in the neighborhood park, Joshua said, I've been thinking about what happened, trying to understand how I missed all the signs. Love can be blinding, I offered. It's more than that, he said, stopping to face me. I think I was so desperate to have what my friends have, marriage, stability, a normal family, that I ignored red flags. I wanted so badly to believe Brittany was perfect that I made her perfect in my mind. That's very insightful, Joshua. My therapist says I've been trying to fill the hole Dad left when he walked out, that I've been looking for completeness in relationships instead of finding it in myself first. I thought about how Joshua's father had abandoned us when Joshua was just 5 years old, offering neither financial support nor emotional presence as his son grew up. She also said something else that hit home, Joshua continued. She said that by uninviting you from my wedding, I was replaying Dad's rejection of our family. I was rejecting the one person who never rejected me. Tears sprang to my eyes. Oh, Joshua, I'm so sorry, Mom. I can't believe I did that to you. You were manipulated by someone who knew exactly which buttons to push, I said, pulling him into a hug. And I forgive you. I forgave you the moment you did it. As we walked home in the gathering twilight, I realized that despite all the chaos and public drama, something profound had healed between us. The truth, painful as it was, had cleared away years of unspoken hurt and misunderstanding. Sometimes you have to break something to fix it properly. 6 weeks after the wedding video went viral, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Wary of journalists still seeking interviews, I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Is this Diane Wilson? The male voice was unfamiliar. Yes. Who's calling? Mrs. Miller, my name is Thomas Wilson. I'm an investigative reporter with The Atlantic. I've been looking into Brittany Thompson's background for a feature story, and I found something you and your son might want to know. My pulse quickened. What kind of something? I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Could we meet somewhere public? I'll bring all my documentation. We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown the following day. I debated whether to tell Joshua, but decided to wait until I knew what this was about. Thomas Wilson turned out to be a serious-looking man in his 40s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather portfolio. After ordering coffee, he got straight to the point. Mrs. Miller, I believe your former daughter-in-law has a pattern of behavior that extends well beyond what was captured in your video. What kind of pattern? I asked cautiously. He opened his portfolio and removed several documents. Brittany Thompson has been married before. This was news to me. Joshua never mentioned that. Because he didn't know. It was a brief marriage 6 years ago in Arizona to a man named Eric Davidson. They were married for 7 months before he filed for divorce. On what grounds? Infidelity. Wilson slid a copy of the divorce decree across the table. But here's where it gets interesting. During that marriage, Brittany legally changed her name from Brittany Peterson to Brittany Thompson, her mother's maiden name. When she moved here and met Joshua, she was already Brittany Thompson, with no obvious connection to her past. I scanned the document, shock rippling through me. She never told Joshua about any of this. There's more, Wilson continued, producing another document. Before the Arizona marriage, she was engaged to a man in Florida. That engagement ended 2 weeks before the wedding, when the groom discovered she was involved with his best friend. How did you find all this? I'm an investigative reporter, Mrs. Miller. It's what I do. He smiled slightly. Plus, once your video went viral, people from Brittany's past started coming forward with their own stories. I verified everything independently. I sat back, processing this information. So this is a pattern for her. Yes, and it gets worse. In each case, Brittany isolated her partner from family and friends, particularly maternal figures. In Arizona, she convinced her husband to move across the country from his widowed mother. In Florida, she orchestrated a falling out between her fiancé and his sister. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Two reasons," Wilson said, leaning forward. "First, I believe your son deserves to know the full truth about the woman he married. Second, I'm writing an article about serial infidelity and the psychological patterns behind it. Brittany Thompson is a case study in how some people repeatedly sabotage relationships while convincing their partners they're the perfect match. And you want my comment for this article. Your perspective would be valuable, yes, but I'm not pressuring you. I'll write the piece either way." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to walk away from the whole situation, to leave Brittany Thompson in the past where she belonged. But another part recognized that this information might help Joshua fully understand that Brittany's behavior wasn't his fault. "I'll talk to you," I decided. "But first, I need to share this with my son." That evening, I showed Joshua the documents Thomas Wilson had given me. He read them in silence, his expression growing more stunned with each page. "She was married before," he said finally, looking up at me. "She had this whole other life she never told me about." "It appears so." "And the pattern, isolating partners from family, cheating, moving to new locations to start fresh. She did all of this before." "Yes." Joshua shook his head in disbelief. "I thought I knew her. I thought what we had was special." "It was special to you," I said gently. "That matters. But to her, I was just..." "What? Another mark? Another guy to manipulate?" "I don't think it's that simple. I believe Brittany does fall in love. She just doesn't know how to sustain it or be faithful to it." Joshua was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents spread across the kitchen table. "You know what the strangest part is? I feel relieved. All this time I've been wondering what I did wrong, why I wasn't enough for her. Now I see it was never about me at all." "It wasn't," I confirmed. "It was about her patterns, her issues." "Thank you for showing me this." He gathered the papers together and handed them back to me. "And thank you for the video, Mom. As painful as it was, you saved me from years of being deceived. I would have never known about any of this if you hadn't exposed the truth." "You're not angry that I interfered?" "I was at first," he admitted. "Part of me wanted to stay in the dark, to believe the fairy tale. But living a lie isn't really living, is it?" His wisdom surprised and moved me. My son was growing through this pain, becoming stronger and more insightful. "No," I agreed. "It's not really living." The next day, I met with Thomas Wilson again and gave him a brief interview about my experience. I was careful not to demonize Brittany, focusing instead on the importance of honesty in relationships and the painful consequences of deception. "You're more compassionate toward her than most people would be," Wilson observed as we concluded. "I've had time to process my anger," I explained. "And I've seen the pain in my son's eyes. That's enough for me. I don't need to add to Brittany's public humiliation." "That's remarkably generous considering she's still threatening to sue you." I smiled slightly. "Well, I didn't say I was a saint." The article was published 2 weeks later. "The Anatomy of Deception: How Serial Cheaters Create and Destroy Relationships." It was thoughtful and nuanced, examining the psychological patterns behind chronic infidelity without sensationalizing Brittany's specific case. Joshua read it carefully, then said, "It's strange to see our personal pain analyzed like this, but it helps me understand. I wasn't uniquely gullible or blind. These patterns are designed to be convincing. You trusted because you're trustworthy," I told him. "That's not a flaw." The article generated another wave of media interest, but smaller than the initial explosion. People were still fascinated by the story, the excluded mother, the cheating bride, the viral video that exposed it all. But for me, the most important outcome wasn't the public interest or the vindication of my actions. It was watching my son heal, seeing him grow stronger as he processed what had happened and began to envision a future beyond this painful chapter. One morning in late May, as we were having breakfast on the patio, Joshua said, "I'm thinking about going back to school." "Oh?" I looked up from my coffee, surprised. "For what?" "Counseling psychology. This whole experience has made me realize how many people are living in toxic relationships because they don't recognize the signs or don't know how to leave." "That's a big change from finance," I observed. "I know, but I think it's what I need. Finance was all about numbers and profit. I want to do something that actually helps people." Pride swelled in my chest. "I think that's wonderful, Joshua. I might start with volunteering at a support group first, to see if it's really for me. Jessica, Ryan's wife, runs one for people affected by infidelity. She said they could use male perspectives." "Jessica reached out to you?" This was news to me. "Yeah, after the article came out. We've talked a few times. She's really insightful about the healing process." I watched my son closely, noting the spark in his eyes that had been missing for months. "You like her?" "As a friend," he clarified quickly. "We're both too raw for anything else. But yes, I like talking to her. She understands in a way most people don't." Sometimes from the ashes of destruction, unexpected new beginnings emerge. 3 months after the wedding video shattered multiple lives, the dust began to settle. Joshua had officially received his annulment, his brief marriage to Brittany legally erased, though the emotional scars remained. He'd started volunteering at Jessica's support group twice a week, finding unexpected healing and helping others navigate similar betrayals. Meanwhile, the legal threats from Brittany had materialized into an actual lawsuit. The thick envelope from her lawyers contained pages of allegations: invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation of character. She was seeking $750,000 in damages. "This is absurd," Joshua said when I showed him the papers over dinner. "Everything in that video was true. How can she claim defamation when she actually did those things?" "It's not about winning," I explained, having consulted with my own attorney. "It's about punishment. Even if the case gets thrown out, I'll still have to pay legal fees to defend myself." "I'll help with the costs," Joshua offered immediately. "No," I shook my head firmly. "This is my battle. I made the choice to create that video." Joshua looked at me intently. "You've never actually admitted that outright before, you know, that you made the video." I set down my fork, realizing he was right. I'd been careful with my words, saying things like, "The truth needed to come out," or "Sometimes a mother has to protect her child." But I'd never directly acknowledged my role. "Yes," I said finally. "I made the video. I followed Brittany. I documented her affair. I posted it online as Rachel Mitchell. And despite the lawsuit and all the drama, I can't honestly say I regret it." Joshua reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Thank you for finally saying it. And for the record, I don't think you should regret it either." The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Eleanor Reed, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a reputation for taking on difficult cases. "The good news," she said after reviewing the lawsuit, "is that most of these claims won't hold up in court. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, and you filmed in public places where there's limited expectation of privacy. And the bad news? The intentional infliction of emotional distress claim is trickier. Creating a viral video to expose someone's infidelity could be considered extreme behavior designed to cause severe emotional suffering." "It wasn't about causing suffering," I objected. "It was about revealing the truth before my son legally bound himself to someone who was already betraying him. I understand that, Eleanor said kindly. But the court will look at your actions objectively. You didn't just show the video to Joshua privately. You posted it online for the world to see. So I could lose? It's possible. Or we could end up with a costly settlement. She closed the file. But there's another option. Fight back. How? Countersue for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Brittany excluded you from your only son's wedding, made derogatory comments about you to others, and planned to move your son across the country against his knowledge. That's emotional cruelty. I considered this. I don't want more litigation. I just want this to be over. Then we might need to consider a settlement. Eleanor's expression was sympathetic, but practical. Sometimes that's the most efficient path forward, even when you're in the right. As I drove home, I wrestled with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to fight, to prove I was justified in exposing Brittany's deception. Another part simply wanted peace, to move beyond this chapter and focus on rebuilding my relationship with Joshua. The decision was made for me that evening when I received an unexpected email. Mrs. Miller, I'm writing to inform you that I've instructed my lawyers to withdraw the lawsuit against you. After careful consideration, I've realized that prolonging this conflict serves no one. I made serious mistakes, hurt people I care about, and am trying to take responsibility for my actions. Continuing legal battles won't help me heal or make amends. This isn't an apology, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I still believe your methods were extreme and cruel, but I acknowledge that my choices created the situation, and I need to focus on my own recovery rather than seeking retribution. Brittany Thompson, I read the email 3 times, uncertain how to feel. Relief, certainly, that the lawsuit was being withdrawn. Surprise at Brittany's capacity for self-reflection, and a strange, reluctant respect for her decision to end the conflict. I forwarded the email to Eleanor, who confirmed we should receive formal notification from Brittany's attorneys within days. One battle, at least, was over. When I shared the news with Joshua, his reaction surprised me. "Good for her," he said. That can't have been an easy email to write. "You're being very generous toward someone who betrayed you so completely," I observed. He shrugged. "The support group is teaching me a lot about forgiveness, not for the other person's benefit, but for my own. Carrying around anger and resentment is exhausting." "When did you get so wise?" I asked, only half joking. "I had a good teacher," he replied, smiling at me. "A mother who showed me that sometimes the hardest path is the right one." As summer turned to fall, media interest in our story gradually faded. Occasionally, a reporter would call for an update or comment on some tangentially related story about wedding disasters or viral videos. But for the most part, life returned to a new kind of normal. Joshua continued volunteering at the support group while applying to graduate programs in counseling psychology. He spent more time with Jessica, their friendship deepening as they helped others navigate the aftermath of infidelity. I returned to my retirement routines, gardening, book club, lunch with friends, but with a new perspective. The experience had changed me, made me more assertive, less willing to tolerate disrespect or manipulation. My friends noticed the difference. "You've got an edge now," Sophia observed over coffee one afternoon. "It suits you." "I'm done being underestimated because of my age or gender," I replied. "Life's too short for that nonsense." "Amen, sister." She raised her mug in salute. "Speaking of life changes, have you heard from Thomas Wilson recently?" I felt a slight warmth in my cheeks. Thomas and I had kept in touch after his article was published, our professional relationship gradually evolving into something more personal. He'd invited me to dinner several times, and we'd spent hours discussing everything from politics to literature to the ethics of journalism. "We're having dinner on Friday," I admitted. Sophia's eyebrows shot up. Really? Is this a date? It's dinner between two friends, I said primly, though we both knew it was more than that. Well, Sophia grinned, it's about time you had some fun after all the drama. I changed the subject, but her words stayed with me. It had been decades since I'd considered dating. After Joshua's father left, I'd focused entirely on raising my son and building my career. Romance hadn't seemed important or necessary. Now, at 62, I was contemplating possibilities I'd long ago dismissed. Life was full of surprises. In October, Joshua received news that he'd been accepted to the counseling psychology program at the local university. He could begin classes in January, while continuing to live at home and volunteer with the support group. I got a partial scholarship, too, he announced proudly over dinner. And Jessica helped me find a part-time position at the community center where they hold meetings. Jessica seems to be a big part of your life these days, I observed casually. Joshua smiled, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. We're good friends. She understands what I've been through. Just friends? For now, he admitted. We're both still healing, but yes, there might be something more developing. I'm happy for you, whatever happens, I said sincerely. She seems like a kind, grounded person. She is. And Mom? He looked at me intently. Thank you for not saying I told you so about Brittany. You've been incredible through all of this. That's what mothers do, I replied. We pick up the pieces when things fall apart, and we help rebuild. Later that week, I received another unexpected email, this time from a literary agent who had been following our story. She was interested in discussing a potential book about my experience, The Excluded Mother Who Exposed Her Son's Cheating Bride. My first instinct was to decline. Hadn't we had enough public exposure? But something made me hesitate before hitting delete. Perhaps sharing our story more fully could help others recognize warning signs in their own relationships or find the courage to stand up for themselves when necessary. I decided to discuss it with Joshua first. To my surprise, he encouraged me to consider the opportunity. Your story resonates with people, Mom, he said, especially women who've been dismissed or disrespected because of their age. Think about it. You were uninvited from your son's wedding because you were supposedly irrelevant, but you ended up changing everything. It would mean revisiting painful memories, I pointed out. True, but it would be your narrative, told your way. Not headlines or sound bites or social media speculation, but the full, complex truth. I agreed to meet with the agent with no commitment beyond an initial conversation. It was one more unexpected door opening in a year full of surprises. That Friday, as I prepared for dinner with Thomas, I found myself taking unusual care with my appearance, selecting a flattering dress, applying makeup with precision, even dabbing on perfume I hadn't worn in years. You look lovely, Thomas said when I opened the door, his appreciation evident in his eyes. That color suits you. Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the owner knows regular customers by name and the wine list is carefully curated. Over pasta and candlelight, Thomas asked about my meeting with the literary agent. I'm still undecided, I confessed. Part of me wants to tell the full story, but another part wonders if we've had enough public attention. It's a personal decision, he said thoughtfully. But I do think your perspective would be valuable. So many women your age are rendered invisible or dismissed, especially by younger generations. You refuse to accept that fate. I just wanted to protect my son, I demurred. Yes, but how you did it is what resonates. You use technology and social media, tools often associated with youth, to reveal an important truth. You didn't accept the narrative others tried to impose on you. Put that way, I could see why the story might have broader appeal. It wasn't just about wedding drama or infidelity. It was about refusing to be sidelined, about claiming agency regardless of age or circumstance. After dinner, Thomas walked me to my car. In the soft glow of the streetlights, he took my hand. "Diane," he said softly, "I'd very much like to kiss you goodnight, if that would be welcome." It had been so long since I'd been kissed that I almost laughed at his formal request. Instead, I nodded, suddenly feeling like a much younger woman. His kiss was gentle, respectful, but with an undercurrent of genuine desire that took my breath away. When we separated, I couldn't help smiling. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I'm glad you finally did," I replied. Driving home, I marveled at how life continued to surprise me. A year ago, I'd been preparing to watch my son marry a woman I didn't fully trust. Now he was embarking on a new career path, possibly beginning a new relationship with someone worthy of him, and I, the mother who'd been deemed too irrelevant to attend her son's wedding, was contemplating both a book deal and a romance of my own. Sometimes the most devastating losses open doors to unexpected gifts. As winter settled over the city, life fell into new patterns. Joshua was deep into preparations for his graduate program, spending evenings with textbooks spread across the kitchen table, just as he had during high school. His relationship with Jessica had evolved cautiously from friendship to something more, though both were proceeding with appropriate caution given their recent traumas. I had agreed to work with a literary agent on a book proposal, tentatively titled Uninvited, A Mother's Fight for Truth. The writing process was both cathartic and challenging, forcing me to examine my own motivations and actions with unflinching honesty. "Did I cross ethical lines?" I wrote one evening, wrestling with the central question of the narrative. "Absolutely. I spied on a woman who had excluded me from my son's life. I created a false identity to expose her deception. I used social media as a weapon of truth. But when traditional approaches fail, when those with power use it to isolate and manipulate, sometimes the only option is to work outside conventional boundaries." My relationship with Thomas continued to develop slowly but steadily. We saw each other once or twice a week, enjoying quiet dinners, long walks, and thoughtful conversations about everything from politics to philosophy. He was intelligent, kind, and refreshingly direct, a man comfortable in his own skin who didn't play emotional games. "I'm too old for drama," he told me one evening as we shared dessert at my kitchen table. "I appreciate how straightforward you are, Diane. It's rare and valuable." Even when that straightforwardness led me to create a viral wedding video, I asked, half joking. "Especially then," he replied seriously. "You saw a wrong that needed righting, and you took action. That's courage." In December, an unexpected email arrived from Jessica. "Dear Diane, I hope this finds you well. Joshua mentioned you're writing a book about your experience, which I think is wonderful. Your story deserves to be told in your own words. I'm writing because our support group is organizing a special workshop in January focused on recognizing manipulation in relationships, and we were hoping you might be willing to speak. Your perspective as someone who recognized warning signs that others missed would be invaluable. No pressure, of course. I understand if public speaking isn't your thing, especially on such a personal topic. Warmly, Jessica." I was touched by the invitation but hesitant. Speaking to a support group about such intimate matters felt daunting. But wasn't this precisely the kind of meaningful impact I'd hoped my experience might have? After consulting with Joshua, who enthusiastically encouraged me to accept, I wrote back to Jessica agreeing to participate. "Just be prepared," Joshua warned with a smile. "Once people hear you speak, you might find yourself in demand. The woman who created the most viral wedding video of the year has valuable insights to share." The workshop was scheduled for the third Saturday in January at the community center downtown. As the date approached, I worked with Jessica to develop my presentation, focusing on the subtle warning signs I'd observed in Brittany's behavior and the gradual isolation tactics she'd employed. The key pattern, I explained during our planning session, was how she systematically separated Joshua from anyone who might question her narrative. First his college friends, then his colleagues, and finally me, the person most likely to recognize manipulation. "That's exactly what Ryan did to me," Jessica nodded. "He made me feel paranoid for asking questions, claimed I was insecure if I expressed concerns." "Gaslighting," I says, having learned the terminology during my research for the book. "Making you doubt your own perceptions." Exactly. And people need to understand these aren't just relationship problems. They're deliberate control tactics. The night before the workshop, I was a bundle of nerves. Public speaking had never been my forte, despite my years as a school principal. Addressing parents about curriculum changes was one thing. Sharing my personal heartbreak and controversial actions was quite another. "You'll be wonderful," Thomas reassured me over the phone. "Just speak from the heart. Your authenticity is your strength." The workshop space was larger than I'd expected, with about 40 people gathered in a semicircle of chairs. I recognized some faces from Joshua's descriptions of the support group, men and women of various ages who had experienced the devastation of infidelity and betrayal. Jessica welcomed everyone warmly, then introduced me with a thoughtfulness that eased my anxiety. "Many of you will recognize Diane Wilson from the viral wedding video that made headlines last summer. What you may not know is the courage and discernment it took for her to reveal a painful truth, knowing she might lose her relationship with her son in the process." As I moved to the front of the room, I was struck by the attentive faces looking back at me. People who had suffered similar betrayals, who understood the pain of discovering deception from someone they trusted. "I never intended to become known for creating a viral video," I began. "I was simply a mother who saw her son being manipulated and decided not to remain silent. Today, I want to share what I observed before the wedding, the warning signs I noticed, and the patterns of isolation that should have been red flags for everyone." For the next 45 minutes, I spoke openly about my experience, how Brittany had gradually separated Joshua from his support network, how she'd undermined my relationship with him through subtle comments and manufactured conflicts, how she'd created a narrative where I was the problem rather than her deception. "The most insidious manipulation," I explained, "happens so gradually you barely notice it. Each individual incident seems minor, perhaps not even worth mentioning, but together they form a pattern designed to isolate and control." During the Q&A session afterward, a woman in her 30s raised her hand. "How did you find the courage to take such a public action? I knew my husband was cheating for months, but I was too afraid of the fallout to confront him." I considered her question carefully. I reached a point where the cost of silence exceeded the cost of action. Yes, creating that video was extreme, and I risked my relationship with my son, but allowing him to bind his life to someone who was already betraying him would have meant years of pain and eventual discovery anyway. Sometimes love requires difficult choices. Another participant, a man around Joshua's age, asked, "Do you regret the public nature of the exposure? Couldn't you have shown the evidence to your son privately?" "That's a fair question," I acknowledged. In retrospect, perhaps I could have tried that approach first. But Brittany had already convinced Joshua that I was interfering and judgmental. Any evidence I presented would have been viewed through that lens of suspicion. I needed the truth to be undeniable and come from an apparently neutral source. The discussion continued, touching on themes of trust, betrayal, forgiveness, and healing. By the end of the 2-hour workshop, I felt drained but fulfilled. Several participants approached me afterward to share their own stories or thank me for my candor. "You've given me the courage to trust my instincts," one woman whispered, squeezing my hand. I've been ignoring red flags for months, but no more. As the room cleared, Jessica joined me. That was incredible, Diane. Your story resonated so deeply with everyone. I hope it was helpful, I said, gathering my notes. More than helpful. Transformative for some. Would you consider coming back for future workshops? We have a session on rebuilding trust next month that would benefit from your perspective. Before I could answer, Joshua appeared at the door, having finished his volunteer shift in another part of the building. The pride in his eyes as he looked at me made my heart swell. Mom was amazing, wasn't she? He said to Jessica, coming to give me a quick hug. Absolutely, Jessica agreed. A natural. Later, over dinner with Joshua, Jessica, and Thomas, I reflected on how far we'd all come since that fateful wedding day. It's strange, I mused. If Brittany hadn't excluded me from the wedding, I might never have discovered her affair. Joshua might be in California now, married to someone who didn't truly love him. And I'd still be married to Ryan living in ignorant misery, Jessica added. And I wouldn't have found my new career path, Joshua said, or reconnected with who I really am beneath all the people-pleasing. Sometimes, Thomas observed, the worst moments in our lives become doorways to something better. Not immediately, not without pain, but eventually. Looking around the table at these people who had become my unexpected community, my son finding his authentic path, the woman who might someday become more than just his friend, the man who was bringing romance back into my life, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The broken pieces were coming together to form something new, something stronger at the mended places. February brought an unexpected communication. I was reviewing the latest draft of my book manuscript when an email notification appeared. Diane, I've been working with a therapist for the past 6 months, focusing on my patterns in relationships and the harm I've caused others. Part of my recovery involves making amends where possible. I'd like to meet in person to have an honest conversation about what happened. I understand if you're not interested, but I believe it might be healing for both of us. Brittany, I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. My initial reaction was skepticism. Was this genuine or some new manipulation? But the straightforward tone, without excuses or accusations, suggested a different Brittany than the one I'd known. I forwarded the email to Joshua, asking for his thoughts. His response came quickly. I think you should meet her. You've both moved forward with your lives. This could provide closure. After careful consideration, I replied to Brittany, suggesting we meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown the following week. When I arrived, Brittany was already there, seated at a corner table. She looked different, thinner, less polished, but somehow more present. Gone was the perfect makeup and designer clothing that had been her armor. Instead, she wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, I admitted. A server came to take our orders, tea for me, coffee for her. When we were alone again, Brittany took a deep breath. I want to be clear, she began. I'm not here to excuse what I did or ask for forgiveness. I'm here because my therapist suggested that acknowledging the harm I've caused might help me break destructive patterns and help you find closure. I nodded, appreciating her directness. I'm listening. I treated you terribly, she said simply. I isolated you from Joshua because I saw you as a threat, not to my relationship with him, but to the facade I'd created. You saw through me from the beginning. Yes, I acknowledged. I did. The wedding exclusion was cruel and calculated. I knew it would hurt both of you deeply, but I needed you out of the picture to maintain control. It was manipulative and inexcusable. Her candor surprised me. This wasn't the defensive, blame-shifting Brittany I'd known. My affair with Ryan wasn't about love, she continued. It was about excitement, validation, the thrill of getting away with something. I've done this before in previous relationships. It's a pattern I'm working to understand and break. Thomas Wilson's article mentioned your previous marriage, I said carefully. She winced slightly. Yes, Eric, another good man I hurt badly, and before that, my fiancé in Florida. She sipped her coffee. I've been diagnosed with a personality disorder that makes it difficult for me to maintain authentic connections. It's not an excuse, just context for behaviors I'm working to change. I appreciate your honesty, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. The video, she continued, looking directly at me, was devastating, humiliating. For weeks I was consumed with rage toward you. I wanted revenge, hence the lawsuit. And now? Now I recognize it as a natural consequence of my actions. Was it extreme? Yes, but I created the situation that made it necessary. She paused. I hurt your son deeply. I was going to continue hurting him throughout our marriage. Your intervention, while painful, likely saved him from years of deception and eventual heartbreak. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity, but found none. This appeared to be genuine reflection, hard-earned through therapy and time. Brittany, I said carefully, may I ask what prompted this change? This level of self-awareness doesn't happen overnight. She smiled slightly, without humor. Rock bottom. After the video went viral, I lost my job, most of my friends, my reputation. Ryan abandoned me when things got difficult. I was alone with the consequences of my choices for the first time in my life, with nowhere to hide from myself. And California? I'm still there. The job offer was real, and they honored it despite the scandal. I've been working remotely while attending intensive therapy. It's been clarifying. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground I never expected to explore with this woman who had caused so much pain. She shared insights from her therapy, how childhood abandonment had created patterns of seeking validation while simultaneously sabotaging genuine connection, how she'd used charm and manipulation to control situations and people. I'm curious, I said as our conversation wound down. Have you been in contact with Joshua? No, she shook her head firmly. That wouldn't be appropriate. My therapist and I agreed that while making amends is important, respecting boundaries is equally vital. Joshua deserves to heal without my interference. That shows growth, I acknowledged. Small steps, she replied modestly. I have a long way to go. As we prepared to leave, Brittany hesitated. There's one more thing I wanted to address. Your book. I tensed slightly. What about it? I won't try to stop you from telling your story. It's yours to tell. I just hope you'll consider that people are complex, that even those who cause harm are often acting from their own wounds. The manuscript reflects that, I assured her. It's not a vengeance narrative. It's about trust, deception, and ultimately, growth through painful experiences. She nodded, seeming relieved. Thank you for meeting with me today. It means more than you know. We parted with a formal handshake, not friends, but no longer enemies. As I walked to my car, I felt an unexpected lightness, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. When I told Joshua about the meeting that evening, he listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions. Do you believe she's genuinely changed? He asked finally. I believe she's trying, I said carefully. Real change takes time and consistent effort, but yes, I saw authentic self-awareness that wasn't there before. Would it bother you if I reached out to her? Not to reconcile, just to have my own conversation? I considered this. Not if it would help you find closure, but I'd suggest meeting in a public place, and perhaps letting Jessica know beforehand. Complete transparency seems wise. Always, he agreed. I've had enough secrets and manipulation for a lifetime. A week later, Joshua met with Brittany for coffee. He returned looking contemplative but at peace. How did it go? I asked, trying not to pry but naturally concerned. Better than expected, he replied. We had an honest conversation about what went wrong, how we both contributed to an unhealthy dynamic. She took responsibility without making excuses, which I appreciated. Did it give you what you needed? He nodded slowly. I think so. For months, I've been asking myself how I could have been so blind, so easily manipulated. Talking to her helped me understand that her deception was skilled and deliberate, not something I should have automatically detected. That's an important realization, I said. You weren't stupid or naive. You were trusting, which is generally a positive trait. The hardest part, he continued, was acknowledging my own role. Not in her infidelity, that was entirely her choice, but in creating a dynamic where I stopped trusting my own perceptions and started seeing myself through her eyes. I abandoned parts of myself to become the person she wanted me to be. His insight impressed me. My son had grown tremendously through this painful experience, developing a self-awareness that would serve him well in both personal relationships and his new career path. I'm proud of you, I told him. Not everyone could transform betrayal into such profound growth. I had a good example, he smiled. A mother who refused to be silenced or sidelined. As winter turned to spring, life continued its forward movement. My book found a publisher and was scheduled for release in the fall. Joshua completed his first semester of graduate school with excellent grades, confirming his aptitude for counseling psychology. His relationship with Jessica deepened, built on a foundation of honest communication and mutual respect. Thomas and I celebrated 6 months together with a weekend trip to the coast, enjoying long walks on the beach and conversations that stretched late into the night. At 62, I was experiencing a romantic connection more authentic and satisfying than any I'd known before. You know what amazes me most about your story? He said one evening as we watched the sunset from our hotel balcony. Not the video or the viral fame, but your capacity for growth. You could have remained bitter, defined by that single explosive action. Instead, you've used it as a catalyst for positive change. In your relationship with Joshua, in your willingness to help others, even in how you view Brittany now. Life's too short for prolonged bitterness, I replied, and holding grudges takes too much energy. He took my hand, his expression serious. Diane, I think I'm falling in love with you. The words took my breath away. After decades of being defined primarily as a mother, a principal, a responsible adult, to be seen and desired as a woman, a complete person with needs and dreams of her own, was profoundly moving. I think I'm falling in love with you too, I admitted, which is terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. He laughed, pulling me close. The best things usually are. 1 year after the wedding that never should have happened, I sat in my garden watching summer flowers bloom. So much had changed in 12 months. Relationships destroyed and created, careers ended and begun, lives redirected in ways no one could have predicted. My book, Uninvited, A Mother's Fight for Truth, was being released the following week. Early reviews were positive, with critics praising its honesty about complex ethical questions and its nuanced portrayal of all involved, including Brittany. I'd sent her an advance copy, feeling she deserved to see how she was depicted before the public did. Her response had been gracious. Thank you for your fairness in portraying me not as a villain, but as a deeply flawed person who caused real harm. The sections about your ethical struggles with your own actions were particularly powerful. This couldn't have been easy to write, but it will help many people recognize manipulation in their relationships. Joshua and Jessica had recently moved in together, a step they'd approached with appropriate caution given their experiences. They continued co-leading the support group, now expanded to 3 locations across the city due to increasing demand. "We're thinking of starting a podcast," Joshua told me during our weekly Sunday dinner. "Something focusing on rebuilding trust after betrayal." "That's a wonderful idea," I enthused. "You both have so much wisdom to share." "We were hoping you might be our first guest," Jessica added. "Your perspective as a parent who recognized red flags would be valuable to many listeners." "I'd be honored," I replied, touched by their inclusion. Thomas, who had joined us for dinner, raised his glass in a toast. "To new ventures and second chances." As we clinked glasses, I marveled at how this unexpected family had formed from the ashes of betrayal and pain. Thomas, now a regular presence in my life, had brought joy and companionship I'd long ago stopped expecting. Jessica had become not just Joshua's partner, but someone I genuinely enjoyed and respected. After dinner, as Joshua and Jessica cleared the table, Thomas pulled me aside to the patio. "I have something I want to ask you," he said, suddenly looking nervous. "Not a proposal. I think we're both past the age where that feels necessary. But an invitation." "I'm intrigued," I smiled. "I've been offered a position as a visiting professor at Edinburgh University for the fall semester. 4 months in Scotland." He took my hand. "I'd like you to come with me." "To Scotland? For 4 months?" The offer took me by surprise. "Your book will be launched by then. You could do remote interviews, work on your next project." He squeezed my hand. "We could explore castles, walk the Highlands, drink whiskey in pubs older than our country." The old Diane would have hesitated, citing responsibilities and practical concerns. But I wasn't that woman anymore. The past year had taught me that life was unpredictable and precious, that opportunities should be embraced rather than feared. "Yes," I said, surprising myself with the immediacy of my decision. "I'd love to go with you." His face lit up. "Really? No need to think about it or check calendars?" "Life's too short for hesitation," I replied. "Besides, I've never been to Scotland." When we shared the news with Joshua and Jessica, their enthusiasm was immediate and genuine. "That's fantastic, Mom," Joshua exclaimed. "You've always wanted to travel more." "What about your book tour?" Jessica asked practically. "I'll do the major U.S. events before we leave, and anything else can be virtual," I explained. "The publisher is already planning online interviews for international markets." Later, as we said our goodbyes, Joshua hugged me tightly. "I'm so happy for you, Mom. You deserve this adventure." "I'm a little nervous," I admitted. 4 months is a long time to be away. "It's exactly what you need," he assured me. "And don't worry about me. I'm in good hands." He glanced at Jessica with such open affection that my heart swelled. The following week, my book was released to unexpected commercial success. The publisher had positioned it not just as a wedding drama story, but as a broader narrative about standing up for truth regardless of age or societal expectations. It resonated particularly with women over 50, many of whom had experienced similar dismissal or invisibility. Television interviews, radio spots, and bookstore appearances filled my calendar. At each event, women approached with their own stories of being sidelined, ignored, or manipulated, and how they had found the courage to reclaim their voice. "You've become something of an icon," Thomas observed one evening as we reviewed media coverage. "The mother who refused to be silenced." "Hardly an icon," I demurred. "Just someone who made a difficult choice in extraordinary circumstances." "Don't underestimate your impact," he insisted. "You've given voice to something many people feel but fear to express. That age doesn't diminish one's right to respect or relevance." The most surprising outcome of the book's success was an invitation to speak at a conference on ethical dilemmas in the digital age. The organizers wanted me to address the question, when is public exposure of private wrongs justified? They want me to speak alongside professors of ethics and legal experts? I asked incredulously when Thomas showed me the email. I'm a retired school principal who made a wedding video. You're someone who navigated an impossible situation with courage and intelligence, he corrected. Your practical experience balances their theoretical approaches perfectly. I accepted the invitation, scheduling it as my final U.S. appearance before our departure for Scotland. The prospect of addressing academics and ethicists was daunting, but also exhilarating, another unexpected door opening in this year of transformation. 2 weeks before we were set to leave for Edinburgh, Joshua invited me to dinner, just the two of us. He seemed unusually nervous, fidgeting with his napkin throughout the meal. Is everything all right? I finally asked. You seem distracted. He took a deep breath. Mom, I'm going to ask Jessica to marry me. Joy surged through me. Oh, Joshua, that's wonderful news. You approve? His relief was palpable. Completely. She's thoughtful, honest, and kind. You bring out the best in each other. And that's how I feel, too. He smiled, then turned serious again. But after everything that happened with Brittany, I've been nervous about taking this step. I've been asking myself if I'm truly ready, if we've built a solid enough foundation. What does your heart tell you? I asked gently. That Jessica is nothing like Brittany, that what we have is real and worth committing to. He looked at me earnestly. And I want to do this right. I want you fully involved in the wedding planning, standing beside me when I make my vows. Tears sprang to my eyes. Nothing would make me happier. I thought about waiting until you get back from Scotland, but I don't want to wait 4 months to ask her. So I'm thinking of proposing before you leave, and then we can plan the wedding for after you return. That sounds perfect, I assured him. And Joshua, I'm so proud of the man you've become, someone who can experience betrayal and still open his heart to love again. That takes tremendous courage. He reached across the table to squeeze my hand. I learned from the best. The night before Thomas and I were scheduled to depart for Scotland, Joshua proposed to Jessica during a private dinner at their favorite restaurant. She accepted joyfully, and they came directly to my house afterward to share the news, both glowing with happiness. As I hugged Jessica, welcoming her officially into our family, I marveled at how completely our lives had transformed in a single year. From exclusion and betrayal to inclusion and celebration. From secrets and lies to openness and truth. From isolation to connection. The next morning, as Thomas and I prepared to leave for the airport, I took a final walk through my garden, saying temporary goodbyes to the plants I'd nurtured. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. How growth requires both tending and space. How sometimes the most beautiful blooms emerge after the harshest seasons. Joshua and Jessica arrived to drive us to the airport, loading our luggage into the car with cheerful efficiency. 4 months will fly by, Joshua assured me, seeing my momentary hesitation. And we'll talk all the time. Plus, we have a wedding to plan, Jessica added, her engagement ring catching the morning light. We'll need your input on everything. As we drove away from the house, I looked back at the life I was temporarily leaving behind. The home where I'd raised my son, the garden I'd cultivated, the community I'd built. But instead of sadness, I felt excitement for the journey ahead, both the literal one to Scotland and the figurative one into this new chapter of my life. Ready for our adventure? Thomas asked, taking my hand as the house disappeared from view. More than ready, I replied, meaning it completely. 1 year ago, I'd been excluded from my son's wedding because I was deemed irrelevant, an inconvenient presence who might disrupt the perfect day. That exclusion had set in motion events no one could have predicted, leading to pain and destruction, but ultimately to growth and renewal. Sometimes being uninvited is the beginning, not the end of the story. As we headed toward the airport, toward Scotland, toward the future, I thought about the message I hoped readers would take from my book. That age doesn't diminish one's right to respect or relevance. That truth, however painful, is ultimately liberating. That even the most devastating experience can become a doorway to something better. And perhaps most importantly, that it's never too late for new beginnings.